The scorched fields stretched endlessly beneath the merciless summer sun, a deceptive tranquility masking the approaching storm. In the heart of California's agricultural valley, veteran James "Iron" Reeves maintained his thriving farm, unaware that his military past and loyal companions would soon clash with a ruthless cartel determined to claim his land. The cartel's grave mistake was assuming this elderly farmer and his German shepherds were easy prey. They couldn't have been more wrong. Dawn painted the horizon in shades of amber and gold as James Reeves surveyed his sprawling cornfields. From the weathered porch of his farmhouse, the morning air carried the sweet scent of ripening crops, mingling with the earthy aroma of freshly tilled soil. At 68, his face weathered by both time and combat, Reeves maintained the sharp alertness that had kept him alive through 3 tours in Afghanistan. Beside him, Ajax and Shadow, his 2 retired military K9s, sat at attention, their ears pricked forward, scanning the landscape with unwavering focus. The farm, nestled in the fertile expanse of the San Joaquin Valley, represented everything Reeves had worked for since leaving the service. Fields of corn, wheat and vegetables stretched across 200 acres, a testament to years of backbreaking labor and determination. The property had been in his family for generations, passed down from his grandfather who had cultivated the land with nothing but a mule and unwavering perseverance. Recent months had brought whispers of trouble to the valley. Neighboring farms reported suspicious activities, equipment vandalism, threatening messages, and mysterious fires. The local sheriff's department seemed overwhelmed, their resources stretched thin across the vast agricultural region. Reeves had noticed unfamiliar vehicles cruising past his property, their tinted windows and out-of-state plates raising red flags in his military-trained mind. Ajax, the older of his 2 shepherds, rose suddenly, his muscular frame tense as he fixed his gaze on the distant tree line. The dog's behavior triggered memories of countless patrols, where similar alerts had often meant the difference between life and death. Shadow, younger but equally vigilant, mirrored his companion's stance, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Reeves reached down, his calloused hand resting on Ajax's head. "What is it, boy?" he murmured, his eyes scanning the horizon. Years of combat experience had taught him to trust his dog's instincts implicitly. These weren't ordinary farm dogs. They were veterans themselves, having served multiple tours as part of the military working dog program. Ajax had been his partner during his final deployment, while Shadow had served with another handler before being retired due to a minor injury. The morning's peaceful tableau was shattered by the distant sound of vehicles approaching along the dirt access road. Reeves stepped back into the shadow of his porch, watching as 3 black SUVs emerged from the morning haze, dust billowing behind them. The vehicles moved with purpose, their speed suggesting this was no casual visit from local farmers or agricultural inspectors. Inside the house, Reeves's security system silently activated, cameras tracking the approaching vehicles. Another addition. Courtesy of his military background, the farm's security was far more sophisticated than anyone might suspect. Motion sensors, infrared cameras, and a sophisticated alert system were carefully concealed throughout the property, transforming the seemingly ordinary farm into a vigilantly monitored sanctuary. The lead SUV pulled to a stop at the end of his long driveway, followed by its companions. For a moment, nothing moved except the settling dust. Then car doors opened simultaneously and 8 men emerged, their movements coordinated and deliberate. They were dressed casually, but Reeves's trained eye noted their tactical positioning and the subtle bulges of concealed weapons beneath their clothing. Ajax and Shadow remained absolutely still, their training evident in their disciplined response. These weren't family pets that would bark at strangers. They were combat-hardened veterans who understood the difference between curious visitors and potential threats. Their silence was more unnerving than any display of aggression. Reeves watched as one man, clearly the leader, stepped forward. He was younger than the others, dressed in expensive casual wear that seemed out of place in the agricultural setting. His walk betrayed an arrogance that came from wielding power without, having earned it through genuine struggle or sacrifice. "Mr. Reeves," the man called out, his voice carrying a hint of accent. "We hope to find you home. We have a business proposition to discuss." His smile didn't reach his eyes, which remained cold and calculating as they swept across the property. Reeves stepped forward, maintaining a careful distance. His posture was relaxed, but his mind was already mapping out tactical positions and potential scenarios. The dogs flanked him, their presence a silent reminder of the farm's hidden strengths. "I'm not interested in any propositions," he replied firmly. "This land isn't for sale." The leader's smile widened, but his eyes hardened. "With respect, Senior, I don't think you understand the opportunity we're offering. The valley is changing. Small farms like yours, they're becoming obsolete. We represent investors who can make sure you're well compensated for your cooperation." Behind him, the other men had spread out slightly, their stance casual but their positioning strategic. Reeves recognized the pattern. They were establishing a potential perimeter while trying to appear non-threatening. It was a tactic he'd seen before, both in combat and during his post-military security consulting work. "My answer remains the same," Reeves stated, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had faced far worse threats. "I appreciate you taking the time to visit, but I'll have to ask you to leave my property now." The leader's facade of friendliness cracked slightly. "Mr. Reeves, perhaps we're not being clear enough. The valley's changing whether you like it or not. We'd hate to see anything unfortunate happen to your beautiful farm. Accidents can be so unpredictable, especially during the dry season." Ajax and Shadow remained motionless, but their muscles were coiled tight, ready to respond to the slightest command. Their training had prepared them for moments exactly like this, when tension hung in the air like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Reeves met the leader's gaze steadily. "I understand perfectly clear," he replied, his tone measured but firm. "And I want you to understand something as well. This land has been in my family for 3 generations. I've served my country, and so have my dogs. We're not easily intimidated." The mention of his military service caused a flicker of uncertainty in some of the men's eyes, but their leader seemed unimpressed. He gestured expansively at the fields around them. "Look around you, old man. Times change. Your service, your dogs, they mean nothing in today's world. We're offering you a chance to retire comfortably. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." The sun had risen higher, its heat beginning to intensify as morning matured. Reeves could feel sweat gathering under his worn cotton shirt, but his focus remained razor sharp. He'd faced down threats in the scorching deserts of Afghanistan. This sun-baked confrontation in his own front yard wouldn't shake his resolve. "I don't think we're done here," Reeves stated firmly. "Leave my property now, or I'll be forced to contact the authorities." His hand rested casually near Ajax's head, a gesture that looked natural, but was actually a practiced combat position. The leader's face darkened, all pretense of friendliness vanishing. "You're making a mistake, old man. A very serious mistake." He turned to leave, but then paused, looking back over his shoulder. "We'll be in touch. Think carefully about your options." The men returned to their vehicles with the same coordinated precision they'd shown upon arrival. As they drove away, dust billowing in their wake, Reeves remained on his porch, watching until they disappeared from view. Only then did he allow his shoulders to relax slightly. Ajax and Shadow maintained their vigilant stance, their training evident in every line of their powerful bodies. They had faced similar threats before, in different settings but with the same high stakes. Their presence was a reminder that appearances could be deceiving. Behind the facade of a simple farming operation lay years of combat experience and tactical expertise. Reeves knew this was only the beginning. The threat had been delivered with practiced efficiency, but he had recognized something in their approach that the visitors hadn't intended to reveal. These weren't ordinary criminals or opportunistic thugs. Their coordination and tactics suggested cartel involvement, a growing problem in the agricultural valley that local authorities seemed powerless to address. Inside his house, Reeves activated additional security protocols on his monitoring system. Cameras would now record continuously, and motion sensors would maintain a wider alert perimeter. He knew from experience that threats like this rarely remained merely verbal. Action would follow, probably sooner rather than later. As the morning wore on, Reeves went about his usual farm routine, but with heightened awareness. The dogs accompanied him everywhere, their behavior showing no sign of the earlier confrontation, but their alertness never wavering. To any observer, it would appear to be business as usual on the farm. But beneath the surface, preparations were being made for the inevitable escalation. The visit had confirmed what Reeves had suspected for weeks. His farm was being targeted by the same organization that had been pressuring other local farmers. But unlike his neighbors, Reeves had resources and experience that his adversaries hadn't accounted for. The cartel had made a crucial mistake in assuming he was just another elderly farmer, vulnerable to intimidation and force. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting harsh shadows across the sprawling fields, Reeves began methodically reviewing his security measures and making necessary adjustments. The confrontation had only strengthened his resolve to protect what was his, and he knew that when the cartel made their next move, they would discover that this particular farmer and his loyal companions were far more formidable than they had anticipated. The following days unfolded with deceptive normalcy, a false calm that Reeves recognized from his military days as the prelude to impending conflict. In the scorching afternoon heat, he worked his fields with methodical precision, Ajax and Shadow maintaining their vigilant patrol around the perimeter. The dogs' military training manifested in their disciplined sweeps of the property, their movements synchronized and purposeful, far removed from the random wandering of typical farm dogs. Reeves had transformed his barn into a tactical operations center, carefully concealed behind weathered wood and rusting farm equipment. Banks of monitors displayed feeds from strategically placed cameras, while topographical maps of the surrounding area covered one wall, marked with potential approach routes and defensive positions. This wasn't paranoia, it was preparation, born from years of combat experience. As dusk approached, casting long shadows across the cornfields, Reeves received an unexpected visit from Sheriff Marcus Thompson. The lawman's patrol car kicked up dust as it approached the farmhouse, its familiar blue and white paint a stark contrast to the black SUVs from days earlier. Ajax and Shadow recognized the sheriff's vehicle, maintaining their position but remaining alert. "Evening, James," Thompson called out as he stepped from his car. The sheriff was younger than Reeves by 2 decades, but their shared military background had fostered a mutual respect. "Thought I should stop by, given what's been happening." "In the valley," Reeves nodded, gesturing toward the porch where a pitcher of iced tea waited. "Appreciate the visit, Marcus. I'm guessing this isn't just a social call." The two men settled into worn rocking chairs, while Ajax and Shadow took up their usual observation posts. "Got word from the Martinez farm yesterday," Thompson began, his expression grim. "Their entire eastern field was torched overnight. 3rd incident this month." He paused, studying Reeves's reaction. "Had any unusual visitors lately?" Reeves recounted the confrontation with the cartel representatives, describing their tactical positioning and coordinated movements. The sheriff listened intently, his jaw tightening at the mention of their threats. "They're getting bolder," Thompson admitted, frustration evident in his voice. "We're stretched thin, James. County budget cuts, limited manpower. We can't maintain proper surveillance on all these farms. The cartel knows it, and they're exploiting our weaknesses." As they talked, the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and deep purples. The evening brought a slight cooling, but the tension in the air remained palpable. Reeves noticed Shadow's ears prick forward, the dog's attention focused on something beyond the immediate perimeter. "You've upgraded your security," Thompson observed, nodding toward one of the carefully concealed cameras. "Good. But these aren't ordinary criminals, James. They have resources, training. The FBI's involved now, but bureaucracy moves slow, and these bastards move fast." Reeves leaned forward, his voice low but intense. "I know what we're dealing with. Marcus, my time in Afghanistan wasn't just about fighting insurgents. We dealt with opium cartels, tracked their operations, learned their patterns. These organizations have weaknesses, just like any other enemy." The sheriff nodded slowly, understanding the implications. "Just be careful, James. They'll probably start with intimidation, property damage, equipment sabotage. But if that doesn't work..." He left the sentence unfinished, but both men understood the escalating nature of cartel violence. As Thompson prepared to leave, he paused by his patrol car. "I'll increase patrols in the area, but you know response times out here. You're essentially on your own after dark." His gaze shifted to Ajax and Shadow. "Good thing you've got some reliable backup." After the sheriff's departure, Reeves conducted a thorough evening security check. The dogs moved with him in practiced formation, their training evident in every precise movement. At specific points around the property, he had installed solar-powered motion sensors, their presence hidden by ordinary farm equipment and vegetation. Inside the barn's hidden command center, Reeves reviewed the day's security footage. Multiple vehicles had passed the farm some multiple times, surveillance most likely. The cartel was probably mapping his routines, looking for patterns and vulnerabilities. He wouldn't give them any. As night fell completely, the farm transformed. Infrared cameras activated, their feeds providing clear views of the surrounding areas. Ajax and Shadow's military training became even more apparent in the darkness. They moved like shadows themselves, their black fur blending perfectly with the night. Reeves remembered their training days in Afghanistan. Ajax had been a natural at detection work, while Shadow excelled in pursuit and apprehension. Together, they had completed countless successful missions, their skills honed in the harshest conditions imaginable. Now, those same skills would help protect his home. In the darkened barn, Reeves accessed a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside lay reminders of his military service, tactical gear, communication equipment, and other tools he'd hoped never to need again. He wasn't planning for war, but he understood the importance of being prepared for any scenario. The night deepened, bringing with it the familiar sounds of the valley, crickets chirping, the rustle of wind through corn stalks, the distant howl of coyotes. But beneath these natural sounds, Reeves sensed a growing tension, an invisible pressure building like the approach of a storm. Around midnight, Ajax's behavior changed subtly. The dog's posture stiffened, his attention focused on the western edge of the property. Shadow mirrored his companion's alertness, both dogs moving silently to flank Reeves as he checked the security feeds. The infrared cameras revealed nothing immediate, but years of experience had taught Reeves to trust his dog's instincts. He activated additional lighting around the barn and equipment areas, the sudden illumination casting harsh shadows across the farm's workspace. A soft beep from his security system confirmed movement at the property's edge. Something or someone, triggering the perimeter sensors. Reeves watched the monitors intently, noting multiple heat signatures moving through the cornfield. They were being careful, their movement patterns suggesting military or paramilitary training. Ajax and Shadow remained absolutely still, their muscles tense, but their training preventing any premature reaction. These weren't ordinary guard dogs that would bark at intruders. They were combat-trained specialists waiting for specific commands or threats. The heat signatures paused at the edge of the equipment yard, their positioning suggesting they were conducting reconnaissance rather than immediate action. Reeves recognized the tactic. They were probably documenting his security measures, planning for a future operation rather than risking a confrontation tonight. He allowed himself a grim smile. Let them observe. They'd see exactly what he wanted, them to see an elderly farmer's predictable security measures. The more sophisticated elements of his defense system remained carefully hidden, along with the true capabilities of his K9 companions. Hours passed, the intruders eventually withdrawing as silently as they had arrived. Reeves maintained his vigilance until dawn, the dogs never leaving their posts. As the first light of morning painted the eastern sky, he began documenting everything he'd observed, adding to the intelligence he'd been gathering since the initial confrontation. The cartel was playing a patient game, but patience was something Reeves had learned through decades of military service. They might think they were dealing with a stubborn old farmer, but they would soon discover they were facing an opponent who understood their tactics all too well. Thompson's patrol car appeared again shortly after sunrise, the sheriff's expression, concerned as he surveyed the property. Got reports of suspicious activity in the area last night, he began, though his tone suggested he already knew Reeves was aware. Had some visitors, Reeves confirmed, showing Thompson the security footage. Reconnaissance team, probably 4 or 5 men. Professional training based on their movement patterns. The sheriff's frown deepened. They're escalating faster than usual. Normally they take weeks to move from threats to action. Something's different this time. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. James, maybe it's time to consider their offer. No farm is worth dying for. Reeves stood straighter, Ajax and Shadow flanking him instinctively. This isn't just about the farm, Marcus. You know what happens if these operations gain a foothold in the valley? They'll destroy everything our community has built. Thompson couldn't argue with that. The cartel's pattern was well established. They'd start with a few farms, using them as distribution hubs and money laundering operations. Soon, they'd control entire agricultural regions, their influence corrupting local businesses and institutions. As the sheriff departed, Reeves began implementing the next phase of his preparations. The cartel's reconnaissance mission had confirmed his suspicions about their approach. They were methodical, professional, but they were also predictable to someone who understood their operational patterns. Throughout the day, he maintained his normal routine, knowing he was probably under surveillance. The dogs patrolled regularly, their behavior giving no indication of their military training. To any observer, the farm would appear to be operating normally, its defenses limited to basic security measures. But beneath this ordinary facade, Reeves was preparing for the confrontation he knew was coming. The cartel had made a critical error in assuming his age, and profession made him vulnerable. They would soon learn that some opponents become more dangerous with age and experience, not less. The first sign of escalation came 3 days later, under the cover of a moonless night. Reeves was reviewing security feeds in his converted barn when Ajax's posture suddenly changed, the dog's muscular frame becoming rigid with alert focus. Shadow, patrolling the eastern perimeter, simultaneously froze, his trained instincts detecting something beyond human perception. Through the sophisticated camera system, Reeves observed multiple heat signatures approaching from different directions, a coordinated effort to infiltrate his property. Unlike the previous reconnaissance mission, these intruders moved with aggressive purpose, their formation suggesting an intent to act rather than merely observe. The security system registered movement at 3 distinct points along the property line. The intruders had split into teams, each targeting different areas of the farm. Their approach was professional, utilizing the natural cover provided by the cornfields and irrigation equipment. But they had yet to realize that every shadow they used for concealment was being monitored. Ajax and Shadow remained in position, their military training evident in their disciplined response. These weren't ordinary farm dogs that would alert intruders with barking. They were combat veterans waiting for the precise moment to act. Their silence was more unnerving than any warning could have been. Reeves activated additional security measures with practiced efficiency. Hidden flood. Lights were prepared but kept dark, while remote cameras tracked each intruder's movement. Years of military experience had taught him the value of letting an enemy reveal their full strength before responding. The first team approached the equipment shed, their movements suggesting they carried incendiary devices. Fire was a favorite. Cartel tactic. Destroying farming equipment could cripple operations for an entire season. The second team moved toward the irrigation control station, while the third approached the barn itself. Through his night vision equipment, Reeves could see they were well armed, carrying both weapons and tools for sabotage. Their movements were coordinated through hand signals and what appeared to be radio communication. These weren't common criminals, but trained operatives. At precisely 2:47 a.m., The first team reached the equipment shed. Their leader, moving with confident precision, began placing what appeared to be an explosive device near the fuel storage tanks. His companions spread out, establishing a defensive perimeter with practiced efficiency. Reeves watched through the monitors as the second team reached the irrigation station. They worked quickly, attaching something to the main control panel, probably a device designed to destroy the farm's water management system. Without irrigation, his crops would wither within days under the merciless California sun. The third team, approaching the barn, moved more cautiously. Perhaps they sensed something wasn't quite right, that this target might be more complex than it appeared. Their hesitation proved their training, but it wouldn't be enough to save them from what was coming. Ajax and Shadow remained absolutely still, their muscles coiled with potential energy, waiting for their handler's command. Their military training had prepared them for exactly this type of scenario, when patience and precision meant the difference between success and failure. Reeves allowed the intruders to fully commit to their positions. Years of combat experience had taught him the importance of timing. Striking too early could allow some enemies to escape, while waiting too long risked losing tactical advantage. The moment had to be perfect. At 2:51 a.m., when all three teams were fully engaged in their sabotage efforts, Reeves initiated his response. With one command, the farm's true defensive capabilities revealed themselves in a coordinated symphony of light and sound. Powerful floodlights erupted simultaneously across the property, transforming night into day in an instant. The sudden illumination was disorienting, designed to create confusion and break the intruders' coordination. Strategic speakers activated, broadcasting a specific frequency that Ajax and Shadow had been trained to operate under. A sound that would be merely distracting to humans, but provided clear tactical commands to the military-trained dogs. Ajax moved first, his powerful form launching from concealment with explosive speed. Years of military service had honed his abilities to peak efficiency, and his target never saw him coming. The dog struck the leader of the first team with precision, his training evident in the controlled takedown that incapacitated without killing. Shadow simultaneously engaged the second team, utilizing the techniques perfected in countless combat. In scenarios, his attack was a masterpiece of military K9 tactics, swift, precise, and overwhelming. The intruders, despite their training, found themselves completely unprepared for an assault by a professional military working dog. The third team, witnessing their companion's swift neutralization, attempted to retreat. Their professional training was evident in their immediate shift to defensive positions, but they hadn't counted on facing opponents with equal or superior tactical experience. Reeves emerged from the barn, his movements deliberate and controlled. His stance and bearing instantly revealed his military background. This was no ordinary farmer, but a combat veteran who had maintained his operational edge. The intruders, realizing their severe miscalculation, faced a critical decision. The leader of the third team, showing remarkable composure, raised his weapon. Before he could fire, Ajax appeared seemingly from nowhere, executing a textbook threat neutralization maneuver. The man's weapon clattered to the ground as Shadow simultaneously engaged his remaining teammates. The entire confrontation lasted less than 2 minutes. When it ended, 7 cartel operatives lay subdued on the ground, their weapons and sabotage equipment scattered around them. Ajax and Shadow maintained their positions, their training evident in their continued focus despite the successful engagement. Sheriff Thompson's response time was impressive. His patrol car appeared just 6 minutes after Reeves's alert call. The sheriff's expression shifted from concern to amazement as he surveyed the scene, taking in the subdued intruders and the professionally positioned guard dogs. "Damn, James," Thompson breathed, shaking his head in admiration. "When you said you were prepared, I didn't imagine this." He gestured to the captured men, who were now being secured by newly arrived deputies. "These aren't street thugs. These are professional operators." Reeves stood with Ajax and Shadow flanking him, their posture still alert despite the apparent end of the threat. "They made a common mistake," he replied, his voice steady. "They assumed what they could see was all they had to deal with." The sheriff's forensics team discovered the true extent of the attempted sabotage. The explosive devices planted near. The fuel tanks were professional grade, capable of destroying half the farm's equipment. The irrigation system had nearly been compromised with a sophisticated computer virus that would have caused catastrophic failure. As dawn approached, federal agents began arriving, their vehicles filling the farm's access road. The FBI had been tracking cartel activities in the valley, and the night's events provided them with valuable intelligence about the organization's tactical capabilities. The cartel's failed operation revealed something crucial. They had severely underestimated their target. What appeared to be a vulnerable family farm had turned out to be a highly defended position, protected by a veteran and his equally experienced K9 partners. Throughout the morning, Reeves maintained his vigilance. He knew the cartel wouldn't take this defeat lightly. If anything, the failed operation would prompt them to reassess their approach and potentially escalate their efforts. Ajax and Shadow remained at their posts, their training allowing them to stay alert despite the long night. The federal agents were particularly interested in Ajax and Shadow, their questions revealing their recognition of professional military. Working dogs. These weren't simply well-trained pets, but combat veterans who had maintained their operational capabilities long after leaving active service. By midday, the immediate crisis had passed. The captured operatives were transported to federal custody, their equipment catalogued as evidence. Sheriff Thompson lingered, clearly concerned about potential retaliation. "They'll come back," he warned, watching as the last federal vehicle departed. "And next time, they'll come prepared for what they found here." Reeves nodded, understanding the implications. The night's success had been partially due to surprise. The cartel hadn't expected to face professional opposition. That advantage was now gone, and any future confrontations would be against an enemy who knew what they were facing. As the sun climbed higher, Reeves began assessing and repairing the minimal damage from the night's action. Ajax and Shadow maintained their patrol patterns, their behavior giving no indication of the crucial role they had played in defending the farm. To any observer, they once again appeared to be nothing more than loyal farm dogs. But beneath this peaceful agricultural scene, preparations were already underway for the next confrontation. Reeves knew the cartel would return, and when they did, they would find that he and his K9 partners had even more surprises waiting for them. The first battle had been won, but the war for the valley was far from over. In the aftermath of the failed attack, the valley's atmosphere shifted palpably. Word spread quickly through the farming community about the night's events, though few knew the full details. The story of an elderly farmer and his dogs thwarting professional cartel operatives seemed almost mythical, growing more elaborate with each retelling in local diners and coffee shops. Reeves spent the following days reinforcing his defenses, knowing the cartel's next move would be more calculated. Ajax and Shadow maintained constant vigilance, their military training evident in their systematic patrol patterns. Every few hours, they would detect vehicles slowing as they passed the farm, observers gauging the aftermath of the failed operation. Inside his tactical command center, Reeves reviewed surveillance footage from neighboring properties. The cartel's activities had become more subtle, but hadn't ceased. Black SUVs still cruised the valley's back roads, and unfamiliar faces appeared in local establishments, their practiced casualness betraying their true purpose. Sheriff Thompson's visits became more frequent, each bringing new intelligence about cartel movements in the region. "They're pulling in resources," he informed Reeves during one such visit, his voice heavy with concern. "Getting reports of new players arriving from down south, professional contractors, military backgrounds." Reeves absorbed this information. While watching Ajax investigate a distant sound, the dog's movement reflecting years of combat training. "They're adapting," he replied, recognizing the tactical shift. "The first team was meant to be expendable. They needed to test our capabilities." The sheriff nodded grimly. "FBI's intercepted some communications. They're taking this personally now. Your farm's become a symbol. If they can't break you, other farmers might start resisting too." He paused, studying the property's defensive layout. "You've really stirred up the hornet's nest, James." Throughout the morning, Reeves observed increased activity along his property's borders. Shadow's behavior confirmed his suspicions. The dog's trained responses indicating multiple surveillance points being established. The cartel was mapping every inch of his defenses, learning patterns and searching for weaknesses. In the converted barn, Reeves accessed a secure computer system, reviewing data from concealed sensors. The equipment, remnants from his military consulting days, provided detailed analysis of ground vibrations and thermal signatures. New patterns were emerging. Systematic probing of his security perimeter, testing response times and coverage areas. By mid-afternoon, the temperature had soared past 90 degrees, the sun beating down mercilessly on the sprawling fields. Ajax alerted to movement near the western boundary, where tall corn provided natural concealment. Through his surveillance system, Reeves observed two men in agricultural workers' clothing, their movements too precise to be actual farmhands. The cartel's reconnaissance had evolved, becoming more sophisticated. These observers knew how to blend with the rural environment, understanding that obvious surveillance would be detected. Their patience suggested they were gathering intelligence for a carefully planned operation, not another hasty attack. Inside his house, Reeves received an unexpected call from a former military colleague now working in private security. "Words, getting around about your situation," the friend informed him. "Cartels reached out to some private military contractors. They're offering serious money to handle the problem farm in your valley." This information confirmed Reeves's assessment. The next confrontation would involve professional operators, men with training and experience matching or exceeding his own. The cartel was done underestimating the elderly farmer and his dogs. As evening approached, Shadow's behavior indicated new surveillance positions being established. The dog's military training allowed him to detect the subtle signs of hidden observers. Slight movements, unfamiliar scents, the quiet sounds of communication equipment. Reeves used this intelligence to map the cartel's observation posts, Their positioning revealed a thorough understanding of tactical surveillance, with overlapping fields of view covering every approach to the farm. They were building a comprehensive picture of his defenses, preparing for a coordinated assault. In his command center, Reeves studied thermal imaging feeds from concealed cameras. The observers maintained professional discipline, minimizing movement and heat signatures, but they couldn't hide from the enhanced sensors he'd installed throughout his property, technology that exceeded typical civilian security systems. Ajax suddenly altered his patrol pattern, moving to investigate the eastern perimeter. The dog's training allowed him to appear casual while actually responding to potential threats. Through his surveillance system, Reeves observed a drone operating at high altitude, likely mapping the property's layout. The cartel's use of advanced technology marked another escalation. They were combining old-school surveillance with modern capabilities, building a detailed intelligence picture that would inform their next operation. Their approach was methodical, professional, exactly what Reeves would have done in their position. As darkness fell, the farm's security posture shifted. Infrared sensors activated, while hidden cameras switched to night vision mode. Ajax and Shadow moved with practiced stealth, their black fur blending perfectly with the shadows. Years of combat operations had made them experts at nighttime surveillance. Sheriff Thompson's evening patrol brought more concerning news. "Got reports of heavy equipment being moved into the valley," he reported. "Multiple vehicles, professional drivers. Whatever they're planning, it's big." His expression reflected the gravity of the situation. "James, maybe it's time to consider federal protection." Reeves declined, knowing that official protection would limit his tactical options. The farm's defenses relied on surprise and unconventional responses, elements that would be compromised by standard security protocols. Besides, he trusted Ajax and Shadow more than any human backup. Throughout the night, the dogs detected periodic movement around the property's perimeter. The cartel's observers were establishing a pattern of continuous surveillance, likely preparing for a prolonged operation. Their patience demonstrated professional training. They understood the importance of thorough intelligence gathering. In his command center, Reeves documented each observation post's location and patterns. The cartel's surveillance was revealing their likely attack vectors, though he suspected some positions were intentionally obvious, meant to draw attention. From their actual approach routes, dawn brought new activities to monitor. Fresh observers replaced their predecessors, maintaining continuous coverage while varying their methods. They were professional, thorough, but they didn't realize their target had spent decades training others in these exact techniques. Ajax and Shadow continued their patrols, giving no indication that they detected the hidden observers. Their military training allowed them to gather intelligence while appearing to be ordinary guard dogs. Every alert, every subtle change in behavior provided Reeves with valuable information about the cartel's activities. By mid-morning, Reeves had identified 12 distinct observation posts around his property. The positioning suggested the cartel was planning a multi-directional assault, likely coordinated with aerial surveillance. Their preparation was impressive, but it also revealed their growing respect for the farm's defenses. Through secure channels, Reeves received updates from contacts in the intelligence community. The cartel had indeed contracted former military operators, specifically those with experience in rural operations. They were building a specialized team, combining local muscle with professional expertise. The farm's daily routine continued unchanged, masking the constant surveillance counter-surveillance dance taking place. To casual observers, it appeared to be business as usual. An elderly farmer tending his crops, accompanied by his faithful dogs. The reality was far more complex. As afternoon heat shimmered above the fields, Reeves detected encrypted radio communications from multiple positions. The cartel's surveillance teams were coordinating their observations, building a comprehensive picture of the farm's security measures. They were professionals doing their job thoroughly, but so was he. The first strike came at sunrise, but not in the way Reeves had expected. As golden light spilled across his cornfields, Ajax's alert posture signaled something was wrong. The morning air carried an unfamiliar chemical smell, and patches of his crops had withered overnight, their leaves turned brown and brittle. The cartel had chosen to attack his livelihood first, using agricultural sabotage to weaken his resolve. Through his security feeds, Reeves observed three figures retreating across neighboring fields, their movements precise and coordinated. They had struck during the pre-dawn hours, applying chemical agents designed to destroy his crops without leaving obvious signs of tampering. The attack was sophisticated, targeting specific areas that would maximize the damage while maintaining deniability. Shadow tracked the saboteurs sent to the property line, his military training evident in how he documented their escape route without pursuing them. The dog's behavior provided valuable intelligence about their methods and timing. These weren't ordinary vandals, but professionals who understood agricultural operations. Inside his tactical command center, Reeves analyzed soil samples from the affected areas. The chemical agent was military-grade, designed to render land uncultivable for months. This wasn't just about destroying crops. It was about attacking his ability to maintain the farm long-term. The cartel was playing a strategic game, trying to force him out through economic pressure rather than direct confrontation. Sheriff Thompson arrived within the hour, his expression grim as he surveyed the damage. "They're escalating," he noted, watching agricultural experts collect evidence. "This isn't their usual approach. Someone's advising them, someone who understands psychological warfare." Reeves agreed, recognizing the tactical shift. The cartel had learned from their failed direct assault, adapting their strategy to target vulnerabilities while minimizing risk to their operators. It was a smart play, one that demonstrated professional military thinking rather than typical criminal methodology. Throughout the morning, Ajax and Shadow maintained elevated alert status, their training allowing them to detect any additional intruders while appearing to simply patrol the property. The dog's behavior suggested multiple observation points remained active, the cartel watching to gauge his response to their latest attack. In his command center, Reeves reviewed thermal imaging from the previous night. The saboteurs had used the irrigation systems to distribute their chemical agents, showing intimate knowledge of agricultural infrastructure. Their approach had been methodical, professional, the work of experts rather than common criminals. By midday, federal investigators had arrived, drawn by the sophisticated nature of the attack. Their presence confirmed Reeves's assessment. This was no ordinary act of vandalism, but a carefully planned operation using restricted materials. The cartel was demonstrating their resources and expertise, sending a clear message about their capabilities. Through secure channels, Reeves received intelligence about increased cartel activity in the region. They were moving additional personnel, into position, establishing safe houses and logistics networks. This wasn't just about his farm anymore. They were preparing for a prolonged campaign to control the entire valley. Ajax's behavior changed subtly as afternoon approached, indicating new surveillance positions being established. The dog's military training allowed him to detect the observers while appearing to simply rest in the shade. Through his security systems, Reeves identified at least 6 different observation points, each professionally camouflaged and positioned for optimal coverage. The saboteurs had left minimal physical evidence, but Shadow's tracking abilities revealed their precise route across the property. The dog's combat experience allowed him to reconstruct their movements, providing valuable intelligence about their tactical approach. They had used natural terrain features for concealment, showing advanced training in rural operations. Local farmers began arriving as word of the attack spread, their faces showing a mixture of sympathy and fear. Each understood they could be next. The cartel was making an example of Reeves, demonstrating the consequences of resistance. Their presence also served another purpose, allowing cartel observers to blend in with the concerned neighbors. His converted barn, Reeves studied satellite imagery of the surrounding area. The chemical attack had been precise, targeting specific sections of his fields that would create maximum economic impact. This wasn't random destruction, but a calculated strike meant to undermine his ability to maintain the farm. As evening approached, Ajax detected movement along the western perimeter. Through his surveillance system, Reeves observed a team setting up sophisticated monitoring equipment. The cartel was establishing a permanent observation post. Their commitment of resources suggested they were preparing for a long-term operation. Sheriff Thompson returned at dusk, bringing news of similar attacks on other farms. "They're using you as an example," he explained, watching Shadow patrol the property line. "Show everyone what happens when you resist, but they're also studying your responses, learning your capabilities." The night brought new challenges as Reeves detected encrypted communications from multiple positions around his property. The cartel's surveillance teams were coordinating their observations, building a comprehensive picture of his security measures. Their radio discipline suggested military or law enforcement background. Inside his command center, Reeves analyzed patterns in the cartel's activities. The chemical attack was likely just the first phase of a larger operation. They were testing his defenses, gauging his resources and response capabilities. Each action revealed their growing respect for his tactical abilities. Ajax and Shadow maintained their vigilance as darkness settled over the farm, their military training allowing them to operate effectively in low-light conditions. The dog's behavior indicated continued surveillance from multiple positions, suggesting the cartel was maintaining 24-hour observation. Through thermal imaging, Reeves tracked movement around his property perimeter. The cartel's observers were professional, minimizing their heat signatures and using natural cover. But they couldn't hide from his enhanced security systems or the trained senses of his combat-experienced dogs. By midnight, new intelligence arrived through Reeves's security contacts. The cartel had contracted additional specialists, experts in rural warfare and agricultural operations. They were building a comprehensive team, combining various skills and experiences to overcome his defenses. Shadow's alert posture suddenly changed, indicating approaching vehicles on the main access road. Through his surveillance system, Reeves observed 3 trucks moving slowly past his property, their cargo, areas covered. The cartel was likely moving equipment into position, preparing for their next phase of operations. In his tactical operations center, Reeves documented each new development, building a picture of the cartel's capabilities and intentions. Their approach was methodical, professional, exactly what he would expect from operators with military or law enforcement backgrounds. They were settling in for a prolonged campaign. The chemical attack had demonstrated their ability to strike without direct confrontation. But Reeves knew this was just the beginning. The cartel was probing his defenses, learning from each interaction. Their next move would be equally calculated, designed to exploit any weaknesses they discovered. As the night progressed, Ajax detected periodic movement around the observation posts. The cartel's surveillance teams were rotating positions, maintaining continuous coverage while varying their patterns. Their discipline reflected professional training. These weren't ordinary criminals, but experienced operators. Through his security network, Reeves monitored encrypted communications between the observation posts. The cartel's operators were using advanced equipment and sophisticated protocols, further confirming their professional backgrounds. They were building a detailed intelligence picture of his capabilities. The farm's automated defenses remained active throughout the night, though Reeves was careful to conceal their true capabilities. Let the cartel think they were observing typical security measures. The real surprises would remain hidden until needed. Ajax and Shadow's presence provided an additional layer of unpredictability. Dawn approached with no further direct action, but Reeves knew better than to relax his vigilance. The cartel's patience demonstrated their professionalism. They were willing to invest time and resources in proper intelligence gathering before their next move. This methodical approach made them more dangerous than ordinary criminals. First light revealed the full extent of the chemical damage to his crops. The affected areas formed a precise pattern, suggesting the attack had been carefully planned to create maximum economic impact. The cartel was demonstrating both their capabilities and their strategic thinking. Sheriff Thompson's morning patrol brought fresh intelligence about cartel movements in the valley. They were establishing additional safe houses and storage facilities, building infrastructure for a prolonged operation. Their commitment of resources suggested this conflict would escalate further before any resolution. 1 week after the chemical attack, the cartel revealed their next strategic move. Under the sweltering afternoon sun, a convoy of unmarked trucks rolled into the valley, bringing with them a new threat that even Reeves hadn't anticipated. Ajax's alert posture signaled the approach long before the vehicles came into view. The dog's military training, detecting subtle changes in the environment that suggested coordinated movement. Through his surveillance system, Reeves observed the convoy stopping at various farms throughout the valley. Men in business attire emerged, carrying documents and engaged in lengthy conversations with his neighbors. This wasn't the brutal intimidation he'd expected. Instead, the cartel had launched a sophisticated economic offensive. Shadow maintained his patrol along the eastern perimeter, where 2 black SUVs had established a visible presence just beyond the property line. The dog's behavior indicated multiple armed observers, their positioning suggesting professional security training, rather than typical cartel muscle. These men were there to be seen, a calculated show of force. Inside his tactical command center, Reeves reviewed intelligence reports from local contacts. The cartel was offering to buy out struggling farmers at premium prices, presenting themselves as legitimate agricultural investors. Their approach was clever, using the economic damage from their own sabotage operations to pressure farmers into selling. Sheriff Thompson arrived unannounced, his expression troubled as he shared the latest developments. "They're offering 3 times market value," he reported, watching Ajax track movement along the property line. "Martinez family sold this morning. Roberts and Chen are considering their offers. The valley's changing, James." The cartel's new strategy revealed sophisticated planning. By acquiring legitimate agricultural operations, they could establish a legal front for their activities while isolating those who resisted. Each farm that sold increased pressure on the holdouts, creating a domino effect that would be difficult to counter. Throughout the day, Reeves monitored increased activity around his property. The cartel's surveillance teams maintained their positions, but their behavior had changed. They were more visible now, wanting him to see their presence. It was psychological warfare, a constant reminder of the pressure building around him. In his command center, Reeves analyzed patterns in the cartel's movements. Their operations showed clear military influence, combining economic warfare with tactical pressure. The visible security teams were likely ex-military contractors, their positioning and protocols reflecting professional training. Ajax's behavior indicated new surveillance equipment being installed along the western approach. Through thermal imaging, Reeves observed a team setting up sophisticated monitoring devices, their movement showing familiarity with military-grade hardware. The cartel was investing significant resources in maintaining constant observation. By mid-afternoon, more neighbors arrived with news of the buyout campaign. Each story followed a similar pattern. Generous offers accompanied by subtle reminders of the difficulties facing independent farmers. The cartel's representatives were professionals, their approach more corporate than criminal. Shadow's alert posture changed as a helicopter passed overhead, its flight path suspiciously regular. The dog's military experience recognized the aircraft's surveillance pattern, though it appeared to be a civilian helicopter conducting routine agricultural surveys. The cartel was establishing aerial observation while maintaining plausible deniability. In his converted barn, Reeves studied satellite imagery showing recent changes in the valley. Properties that had sold to the cartel were already being modified. New security infrastructure appearing almost overnight. They were creating a network of controlled territory, systematically isolating resistant farms. Local agricultural suppliers began reporting pressure to stop serving certain farms. The cartel's economic influence was expanding, targeting the support systems independent farmers relied on. It was a comprehensive strategy, attacking from multiple angles while maintaining a legitimate business facade. As evening approached, Ajax detected a new team of observers establishing position near the North Field. Through his security feeds, Reeves noted their professional equipment and disciplined protocols. These weren't cartel soldiers, but private military contractors, bringing a new level of expertise to the operation. Sheriff Thompson's evening patrol brought reports of increased traffic through the valley. "They're moving in equipment," he explained, watching shadow track movement beyond the property line, setting up processing facilities on the farms they've bought, making it all look legitimate. The night brought subtle changes in the cartel's surveillance patterns. Their teams rotated positions with military precision, maintaining continuous coverage while varying their methods. Each shift change revealed more about their capabilities. These were experienced operators executing a well-planned strategy. Inside his tactical operations center, Reeves monitored encrypted communications between observation posts. The cartel's teams were using advanced equipment and sophisticated protocols, further confirming their professional backgrounds. They were building a detailed picture of his defenses while establishing a permanent presence in the valley. Through thermal imaging, Reeves tracked movement around his property perimeter. The cartel's observers were professional, minimizing their heat signatures and using natural cover. But they couldn't hide from his enhanced security systems or the trained senses of his combat-experienced dogs. By midnight, new intelligence arrived. Through secure channels, the cartel had contracted additional specialists, experts in agricultural operations and rural security. They were building a comprehensive team, combining various skills to control the valley through seemingly legitimate means. Ajax's alert behavior changed as vehicles approached along the main road. Through his surveillance system, Reeves observed a convoy of agricultural equipment moving toward recently acquired properties. The cartel was quickly converting their purchases into operational facilities, demonstrating their long-term commitment to the region. Shadow's military training allowed him to detect subtle changes in the observers' patterns. The dog's behavior indicated new teams taking position, their movements suggesting extensive tactical experience. The cartel was rotating their personnel, ensuring fresh eyes maintained constant surveillance. In his command center, Reeves documented each development in the cartel's strategy. Their approach showed sophisticated planning, using legitimate business operations to mask their true intentions while systematically isolating resistant farmers. It was a campaign designed by professionals who understood both tactical and economic warfare. The farm's automated defenses remained active throughout the night, though Reeves carefully concealed their true capabilities. Let the cartel think. They were observing typical security measures. The real surprises would remain hidden until needed. Ajax and Shadow's presence provided an additional layer of unpredictability. Dawn approached with reports of more farms considering the cartel's offers. Each sale strengthened their position, creating a network of controlled properties that would be difficult to dislodge. Their strategy was working, combining economic pressure with tactical intimidation to transform the valley's agricultural community. Sheriff Thompson's morning briefing revealed the extent of the cartel's influence. They're establishing processing centers, distribution networks, he reported grimly. Everything looks legitimate on paper. FBI's having trouble finding anything they can act on. Throughout the morning, Ajax and Shadow maintained their patrol patterns, their military training allowing them to gather intelligence while appearing to be ordinary guard dogs. The cartel's observers remained in position, their presence a constant reminder of the pressure building around Reeves's farm. In his tactical operations center, Reeves analyzed the cartel's pattern of acquisitions. They were systematically purchasing properties that would provide tactical advantages, high ground, key access routes, water rights. Their strategy showed professional planning, combining military expertise with business acumen. The valley's transformation was accelerating. Each day brought news of another farm sold, another family choosing the cartel's generous offers over uncertain resistance. The pressure on holdouts increased as support services became harder to access and suspicious accidents plagued resistant farmers. As noon approached, Ajax detected new surveillance teams establishing positions along the southern perimeter. Through his security feeds, Reeves observed their professional equipment and coordinated movements. The cartel was maintaining constant pressure while building their legitimate business facade. Shadow's behavior indicated ongoing aerial surveillance, though the aircraft maintained patterns that appeared routine. The cartel's operators understood the importance of deniability, conducting their observations in ways that wouldn't attract official attention. The farm's daily operations continued, masking the constant surveillance counter-surveillance dance taking place. To casual observers, it appeared to be business as usual. An elderly farmer tending his crops, accompanied by his faithful dogs. The reality was far more complex, as both sides prepared for the next phase of their confrontation. The turning point arrived unexpectedly on a quiet Tuesday morning. Ajax's sudden alert posture caught Reeves's attention. Something about the dog's behavior signaled this wasn't routine surveillance. Through his security feeds, he observed an unfamiliar vehicle approaching, its government plates and official markings suggesting county administration. The visitor emerged from the car with practiced confidence, his expensive suit and polished appearance at odds with the dusty farmland surrounding him. Behind him, Shadow tracked the subtle movements of cartel observers, adjusting their positions, the dog's military training detecting their increased interest in this new development. "Mr. Reeves," the man called out, presenting credentials identifying him as Thomas Wells, County Agricultural Commissioner. "I'm here to discuss some concerns about your property." His smile was practiced, professional, but his eyes held the cold calculation of someone executing a carefully planned strategy. Inside his tactical command center, Reeves had already begun running background checks. Wells' credentials were legitimate, but recent financial transactions suggested connections to shell companies linked to cartel operations. This wasn't a routine inspection. It was the next phase of their campaign. "We've received complaints about potential contamination from your property," Wells explained, producing official-looking documents. "Chemical runoff, soil degradation. Given recent incidents in the valley, we'll need to conduct a full environmental assessment." Ajax maintained his position near Reeves, the dog's behavior revealing nothing of his combat training. But his subtle signals confirmed Reeves' suspicions. Multiple cartel observation teams were monitoring this interaction with intense interest. This was a coordinated operation. The inspection order was masterfully crafted, using the cartel's own chemical attack as justification for official intervention. They had created the problem and were now leveraging bureaucratic authority to exploit it. It was a sophisticated strategy that demonstrated their growing influence over local institutions. Sheriff Thompson arrived midway through the conversation, his timing too perfect to be coincidental. The lawman's expression revealed his understanding of the situation. The cartel had found a new way to apply pressure, using legitimate authority to further their objectives. "This is harassment, plain and simple," Thompson stated, reviewing the documents. "They hit your fields with chemicals, and now they're using that damage to justify government intervention. It's clever, I'll give them that." Throughout the morning, Reeves observed increased activity around his property perimeter. The cartel's surveillance teams had moved closer, abandoning some of their previous caution. They wanted to be seen now, understanding that their official cover provided new opportunities for overt pressure. Shadow's behavior indicated new observers arriving, their movements suggesting military or law enforcement backgrounds. The cartel was coordinating their surveillance with Wells' inspection, gathering intelligence about Reeves' responses and security measures. In his command center, Reeves analyzed patterns in recent county enforcement actions. Similar inspections had preceded several farm sales in the valley, each following environmental complaints that appeared shortly after suspicious damage to crops or equipment. The cartel had refined their strategy through practice. Wells spent hours documenting supposed violations, his thoroughness masking the operation's true purpose. Each photograph, each soil sample, each notation could be used to justify official action against the farm. The cartel was building a legal framework for their next move. "We'll need full access to conduct proper testing," Wells announced, indicating restricted areas of the property, including internal structures and equipment storage areas. His request revealed the operation's secondary objective: gaining detailed intelligence about Reeves's security measures. Ajax's alert posture shifted subtly as more vehicles arrived, their official markings providing cover for additional observers. The dog's military training allowed him to track multiple potential threats while maintaining an appearance of casual interest. Through his surveillance system, Reeves noted the new arrivals' tactical positioning. The inspection team spread out across the property, their movements suggesting familiarity with search patterns. These weren't ordinary agricultural inspectors, but trained operators using official cover. Their real objective was gathering intelligence about the farm's defenses and vulnerabilities. Sheriff Thompson maintained a presence throughout the inspection, his authority providing some check on Wells's activities. "They're documenting everything," he noted quietly, "building a case for seizure if the buyout fails. These people know exactly what they're doing." By afternoon, Wells had assembled an impressive collection of evidence, actual contamination from the cartel's attack mixed with manufactured violations. The documentation would support whatever administrative action they deemed necessary, creating pressure that even military training couldn't easily counter. Shadow's behavior indicated continuous surveillance from multiple positions. The dog's combat experience detecting subtle changes in the observer's patterns. The cartel was using the inspection as cover to establish new observation posts, expanding their monitoring capabilities under official protection. In his converted barn, Reeves studied the cartel's evolving strategy. They had learned from each confrontation, adapting their approach to exploit legal and administrative vulnerabilities. Their use of legitimate authority demonstrated sophisticated planning and deep understanding of agricultural regulations. Local farmers began arriving as word of the inspection spread, their presence both supportive and revealing. Some were clearly gathering intelligence for the cartel, their observations focusing more on security measures than agricultural concerns. Others brought warnings about similar inspections at resistant farms. As evening approached, Ajax detected new surveillance teams establishing positions under cover of departing county vehicles. Through his security feeds, Reeves observed their professional equipment and coordinated movements. The cartel was using the inspection's authority to enhance their intelligence-gathering capabilities. Wells concluded his inspection with another practiced smile, his manner remaining professional despite the operation's true nature. "We'll need to conduct follow-up assessments," he announced. "Environmental compliance is an ongoing process." The threat was clear. This pressure would continue indefinitely. Throughout the night, Reeves monitored increased activity around his property. The cartel's observers had grown bolder, their official cover allowing more aggressive surveillance. Ajax and Shadow maintained their patrols, their military training now focused on tracking both overt and covert observers. In his tactical operations center, Reeves analyzed the day's developments. The cartel had demonstrated new capabilities, not just buying influence, but effectively controlling county operations. Their strategy showed sophisticated understanding of administrative warfare, using bureaucratic pressure to supplement their other tactics. Through secure channels, Reeves received intelligence about similar operations throughout the region. The cartel was using environmental regulations and agricultural compliance requirements to pressure resistant farmers. Each inspection created documentation that could justify official action against targeted properties. Sheriff Thompson's evening report confirmed the pattern. "They're building administrative cases against every holdout," he explained, "creating paper trails that make seizure look legitimate. When they move, it'll be with full official backing." The farm's security systems tracked continuous movement around the perimeter as cartel teams exploited their new cover to enhance surveillance positions. Their operation showed professional planning, using the inspection as opportunity to gather detailed intelligence while establishing permanent observation posts. By midnight, new information arrived through Reeves' military contacts. The cartel had contracted specialists in agricultural regulation and environmental law, building a team capable of exploiting administrative vulnerabilities. Their strategy reflected deep understanding of both tactical and legal warfare. Ajax's alert behavior indicated ongoing surveillance from multiple directions, the dog's training allowing him to detect both obvious and concealed observers. The cartel's teams maintained continuous coverage, their official sanction removing previous constraints on their operations. Shadow's military experience proved crucial in tracking the observers' movements, as the dog's combat training helped distinguish between actual inspection activities and surveillance operations. The cartel's teams were professional, but they couldn't completely hide their true purpose from trained observers. Reeves documented each new development, building a clear picture of the cartel's strategy. They had evolved from direct confrontation to sophisticated administrative warfare, using legitimate authority to apply pressure while gathering intelligence for future operations. The inspection had revealed the cartel's growing influence and adaptability. They weren't just criminals with guns anymore, but a professional organization capable of using legal and administrative systems as weapons. This evolution made them more dangerous, as traditional defensive measures might prove inadequate against bureaucratic warfare. The cartel's administrative assault evolved into a sophisticated campaign over the following weeks. Each day brought new official vehicles to the farm, their occupants carrying clipboards and documents rather than weapons. Ajax's military training proved invaluable in detecting which visitors were legitimate inspectors and which were cartel operatives using official cover for surveillance. Through his security feeds, Reeves observed a disturbing pattern emerging. The various inspection teams worked in coordinated shifts, their movements suggesting tactical training rather than bureaucratic routine. They were systematically documenting every aspect of his operation while probing his defenses for weaknesses. Shadow maintained constant patrol along the property lines, where cartel observers had established semi-permanent positions under the guise of environmental monitoring stations. The dog's combat experience allowed him to track their movements while appearing to simply guard the farm's perimeter. Inside his tactical command center, Reeves analyzed the mounting documentation being generated against his property. Environmental violations, safety concerns, agricultural compliance issues. Each inspection added new layers to the administrative case being built. The cartel was creating a paper trail that could justify official action. Sheriff Thompson arrived with troubling news from neighboring farms. "They're using the same playbook across the valley," he reported, watching Ajax track movement near the western field. "Every holdout gets hit with inspections until they can't afford to fight anymore. 3 more families sold out this week." The cartel's strategy showed remarkable sophistication. By working through official channels, they had effectively neutralized many of Reeves's tactical advantages. His military experience and security measures offered little protection against bureaucratic warfare conducted under color of law. Throughout the morning, Reeves monitored increased activity around his property. County vehicles moved in, practiced patterns, their occupants photographing and documenting every aspect of his operation. But beneath this official facade, cartel surveillance teams gathered detailed intelligence about his security measures. In his command center, Reeves studied satellite imagery showing recent changes in the valley. Properties acquired by the cartel were being systematically modified, new infrastructure appearing that had nothing to do with legitimate agriculture. They were creating a network of controlled territory while maintaining a legal facade. Ajax's behavior indicated new surveillance teams establishing positions near the irrigation control stations. Through his security system, Reeves observed their professional equipment and coordinated movements. The cartel was using environmental testing as cover to map his farm's critical infrastructure. Local farmers reported increasing pressure from regulatory agencies. Agricultural suppliers were being subjected to intense scrutiny, making it difficult for resistant farms to obtain necessary materials. The cartel's influence had spread beyond direct control, creating an environment where compliance became the path of least resistance. Shadow's alert posture changed as another county helicopter conducted an aerial survey. Its flight path, suspiciously, focused on security-related features of the property. The dog's military training recognized the aircraft's true purpose, gathering detailed intelligence under official cover. In his converted barn, Reeves reviewed recordings of recent inspections. The team's movement patterns revealed their tactical training, each routine check carefully designed to gather specific information about his defenses. They were building a comprehensive picture of his capabilities while maintaining plausible deniability. The pressure mounted as new violations were discovered almost daily. Each finding required expensive corrections and documentation, creating a financial burden that would eventually become unsustainable. The cartel understood that even a well-defended position could fall to administrative attrition. As afternoon approached, Ajax detected a new team of inspectors arriving, their movements suggesting military or law enforcement backgrounds. Through his surveillance feeds, Reeves noted their focus on tactical features of the property rather than agricultural concerns. The cartel was gathering intelligence for future operations. Sheriff Thompson's afternoon patrol brought more concerning news. FBI's hands are tied, he explained, watching shadow track movement beyond the property line. Everything looks legitimate on paper. They can't prove the inspections are anything but routine enforcement. The night brought subtle changes in the cartel's surveillance patterns. Their teams maintained positions established during daylight. Inspections, no longer needing to conceal their presence. Each observation post was now protected by official documentation, making challenge or removal nearly impossible. Inside his tactical operations center, Reeves monitored encrypted communications between observation teams. The cartel's operators were coordinating their activities with inspection schedules, using official cover to enhance their surveillance capabilities. Their strategy showed sophisticated understanding of administrative warfare. Through thermal imaging, Reeves tracked movement around his property perimeter. The cartel's observers maintained professional discipline, but they couldn't hide their tactical positioning from his enhanced security systems or the trained senses of his combat-experienced dogs. By midnight, new intelligence arrived through secure channels. The cartel had expanded their team of regulatory experts, bringing in specialists capable of exploiting every administrative vulnerability. They were building a case that would withstand legal scrutiny while maintaining pressure on resistant farms. Ajax alert behavior changed as vehicles approached along the main road. Through his surveillance system, Reeves observed a convoy of official vehicles moving toward recently acquired properties. The cartel was expanding their operation, using legitimate authority to establish control over the valley's agricultural infrastructure. Shadow's military training allowed him to detect subtle changes in the observer's patterns. The dog's behavior indicated new teams taking position, their movements suggesting extensive tactical experience. The cartel was rotating their personnel, ensuring fresh eyes maintained constant surveillance under official cover. In his command center, Reeves documented each development in the cartel's strategy. Their approach showed sophisticated planning, using administrative pressure to supplement their other tactics while building a legal framework for potential seizure. It was a campaign designed by professionals who understood both bureaucratic and tactical warfare. The farm's automated defenses remained active throughout the night, though their effectiveness against administrative action was limited. Traditional security measures provided little protection against officials with legitimate authority to access the property. The cartel had found a way to neutralize his tactical advantages. Dawn approached with reports of more farms facing similar pressure. Each inspection, each violation, each required correction drained resources and resolve from the holdouts. The cartel's strategy was working, combining administrative harassment with economic pressure to overcome resistance without direct confrontation. Sheriff Thompson's morning briefing revealed the extent of the cartel's influence. "They've got people in every department now," he reported grimly. "Building inspectors, environmental protection, agricultural compliance. They're creating a web that's almost impossible to fight." Throughout the morning, Ajax and Shadow maintained their patrol patterns. Their military training now focused on monitoring both official inspectors and covert observers. The cartel's strategy had transformed the nature of the threat, requiring adaptation of traditional security measures. In his tactical operations center, Reeves analyzed the pattern of inspections. They were systematically targeting critical aspects of his operation: water rights, equipment maintenance, chemical storage. Each finding created new requirements that consumed time and resources while providing intelligence about his capabilities. The valley's transformation continued at an accelerating pace. Properties that surrendered to the pressure were quickly converted to cartel operations, their legitimate agricultural activities masking more sinister purposes. Each acquisition strengthened their position while increasing pressure on remaining holdouts. As noon approached, Ajax detected new inspection teams arriving at neighboring farms. Through his security feeds, Reeves observed their coordinated movements and professional equipment. The cartel was expanding their administrative offensive, applying systematic pressure across the entire valley. Shadow's behavior indicated ongoing surveillance from multiple directions, though the observers now operated openly under official sanction. The cartel had effectively removed the need for covert observation, using legitimate authority to maintain continuous monitoring of resistant properties. The breaking point came with the morning fog, rolling thick across the valley like nature's own smokescreen. Ajax's alert posture changed dramatically at dawn, the dog's military training detecting something beyond the usual surveillance patterns. Through the security feeds, Reeves observed an unprecedented gathering of vehicles at the valley's edge. County trucks mixed with unmarked SUVs, their numbers suggesting something larger than routine inspection. Shadow's behavior confirmed his partner's assessment, the dog's combat experience recognizing coordinated movement in the pre-dawn gloom. The cartel had assembled a significant force, using official vehicles for cover while positioning their operators around the property. This wasn't another administrative visit. It was the prelude to something more aggressive. Inside his tactical command center, Reeves monitored multiple heat signatures approaching through the cornfields. The teams moved with professional precision, their patterns suggesting military or law enforcement backgrounds. Under cover of legitimate inspection, authority, the cartel was mounting a major operation. Sheriff Thompson's urgent arrival confirmed the gravity of the situation. "Just got word," he reported grimly, watching Ajax track movement near the eastern boundary. "They've obtained an emergency order for environmental remediation, giving them authority to access and secure the entire property. This is their endgame, James." The cartel's strategy had evolved to its final form, using manufactured environmental violations to justify a full takeover under color of law. Their patience and sophistication had created a scenario where resistance could be portrayed as criminal obstruction rather than legitimate defense of property. Throughout the early morning, Reeves observed increased activity around his perimeter. Teams of inspectors established positions with tactical precision, their movements revealing their true nature. These weren't bureaucrats with clipboards, but trained operators using official cover for a coordinated assault. In his command center, Reeves studied thermal imaging showing the full extent of the operation. The cartel had committed significant resources, positioning teams to control every approach to the farm. Their strategy combined administrative authority with tactical capability, creating a formidable challenge to traditional defenses. Ajax's alert behavior indicated new teams approaching from multiple directions, their movement patterns suggesting extensive combat experience. The dog's military training recognized the difference between actual inspectors and operators using official cover. Through his security feeds, Reeves noted their professional equipment and coordinated protocols. The morning sun burned through the fog as Thomas Wells arrived, leading a convoy of official vehicles. His manner remained professional, but his eyes held the cold satisfaction of someone executing a carefully planned operation. "Mr. Reeves," he called out, holding up a thick document, "we have an emergency order requiring immediate access to your property." Shadow maintained position near Reeves, the dog's presence a reminder that not all the farm's defenses were visible. The cartel's teams might have official cover, but they would soon discover that administrative authority had limitations against military training and combat experience. Local farmers began gathering at the property line, drawn by the unprecedented show of force. Some were clearly there to observe for the cartel, while others brought warnings about similar operations being prepared against remaining holdouts. The valley's transformation was entering its final phase. Inside his converted barn, Reeves analyzed the cartel's deployment patterns. Their teams had established overlapping fields of control, using environmental testing equipment as cover for tactical positions. The operation showed sophisticated planning, combining legitimate authority with military expertise. Wells began directing teams across the property, each group moving with purpose that belied their official roles. "We'll need to inspect all structures," he announced, gesturing toward the barn and storage buildings. "Environmental hazards require thorough documentation." Ajax's behavior revealed multiple surveillance positions being established under cover of inspection activities. Through his security system, Reeves tracked their professional equipment and coordinated movements. The cartel was using administrative authority to position forces for a potential confrontation. Sheriff Thompson maintained his presence, though his authority seemed diminished against the array of county and state credentials on display. "This is still private property," he reminded Wells. "Emergency order or not, there are limits to what you can do." The tension mounted as inspection teams approached restricted areas of the property. Their movements suggested familiarity with tactical operations rather than environmental testing. The cartel had selected operators with both combat experience and enough technical knowledge to maintain their cover story. Shadow's alert posture changed as vehicles continued arriving, their official markings providing cover for additional operators. The dog's military training allowed him to track multiple potential threats while maintaining disciplined response. These weren't ordinary inspection teams, but trained forces preparing for possible conflict. In his tactical operations center, Reeves monitored encrypted communications between the cartel's teams. Their radio discipline and protocols revealed professional training, using official inspection activities to mask their true purpose. They were establishing control over the property while maintaining plausible deniability. Wells directed his teams with practiced efficiency, each group focusing on specific areas of the farm. "Environmental contamination requires immediate containment," he explained, though his eyes revealed different priorities. "We'll need unrestricted access to all facilities." Throughout the morning, Reeves observed increasing pressure around his security perimeter. The cartel's teams maintained their official cover while systematically probing his defenses. Their strategy showed sophisticated understanding of both administrative and tactical warfare. Ajax's behavior indicated continuous surveillance from multiple positions, the dog's combat experience detecting subtle changes in the observer's patterns. The cartel was using inspection authority to establish complete coverage of the property, preparing for whatever response Reeves might attempt. Local law enforcement appeared increasingly marginalized as state and county officials asserted control. Sheriff Thompson watched helplessly as teams moved through the property, their activities protected by layers of administrative authority. "They've thought this through," he admitted grimly, "created a situation where resistance looks criminal." By midday, the cartel's operation had revealed its true scale. Dozens of official vehicles surrounded the property, while teams systematically documented every aspect of the farm. Their approach combined legitimate inspection procedures with tactical positioning, creating a complex challenge for any defense. Shadow's military training proved crucial in tracking the team's movements, as the dog's combat experience helped distinguish between actual inspection activities and tactical maneuvers. The cartel's operators were professional, but they couldn't completely hide their true purpose from trained observers. Inside his command center, Reeves analyzed the pattern of team deployments. The cartel had effectively surrounded his property, with forces operating under official authority, creating a situation where traditional defensive measures might be considered criminal acts. Their strategy showed sophisticated understanding of legal and tactical warfare. Wells maintained his professional facade as he coordinated the operation, each team moving with precision that suggested extensive preparation. "Environmental remediation requires immediate action," he repeated, though his expression revealed satisfaction rather than concern. "We have full authority to secure any hazardous areas." The pressure mounted as inspection teams approached critical areas of the property. Their movements suggested familiar with combat operations rather than environmental testing, using official cover to establish tactical positions. The cartel had selected operators capable of maintaining their cover while preparing for potential confrontation. Ajax's alert behavior revealed multiple teams establishing control points under official sanction. Through his surveillance system, Reeves tracked their professional equipment and coordinated protocols. The cartel was using administrative authority to position forces for whatever response might come. As afternoon approached, the operation's true nature became increasingly clear. Under cover of environmental inspection, the cartel had effectively occupied the property with trained operators. Their strategy combined legitimate authority with tactical capability, creating a situation where conventional resistance might be legally impossible. Sheriff Thompson's presence provided little protection against the array of official authority on display. "They're pushing the limits," he observed, watching Shadow track movement near the barn. "But everything looks legitimate on paper. Fighting this could land you in federal court." Through his security feeds, Reeves monitored the cartel's teams, establishing complete coverage of his property. Their approach showed sophisticated planning, using administrative authority to achieve tactical objectives while maintaining legal deniability. The operation represented the evolution of their strategy, combining multiple forms of pressure into an almost irresistible force. The cartel's administrative siege reached its tipping point 3 weeks later during a seemingly routine inspection. Through his security feeds, Reeves observed Thomas Wells arriving with an unusually large team, their movements suggesting this visit would be different from previous harassments. Ajax's alert posture confirmed something had changed. The dogs. Military training detecting subtle differences in the inspection team's approach. These weren't the same bureaucrats with clipboards. Many moved with the disciplined precision of combat veterans, attempting to appear as ordinary officials. "Mr. Reeves," Wells called out, his practiced smile failing to mask an air of anticipation. "We've received authorization for a full environmental impact assessment. Given the serious nature of potential contamination, we'll need complete access to all structures and facilities." Shadow maintained position near the barn's entrance, the dog's behavior indicating multiple surveillance teams establishing new positions around the property. Through thermal imaging, Reeves tracked their systematic deployment. This wasn't an inspection, but a coordinated operation using official cover. Sheriff Thompson arrived minutes later, his expression grim as he surveyed the gathering force. "Just got word from the county office," he reported quietly. "They've obtained emergency authorization to secure and remediate any areas deemed hazardous. This is their play, James. They're not just looking anymore." Inside his tactical operations, his center, Reeves monitored the teams spreading across his property. Their movements revealed military training beneath the veneer of official business, each group positioning themselves with tactical precision while maintaining the facade of environmental testing. Wells directed his teams with practiced efficiency, each group focusing on specific areas of the farm. "Environmental safety requires thorough documentation," he explained, though his eyes revealed different priorities. "We'll need unrestricted access to all facilities, including secured storage areas." The cartel had evolved their strategy to its final form, using manufactured violations to justify a tactical takeover under color of law. Their patience and sophistication had created a scenario where defending one's property could be portrayed as criminal obstruction of official duties. Ajax and Shadow maintained their disciplined responses, their military training allowing them to track multiple threats while appearing as ordinary guard dogs. The cartel's operation showed remarkable sophistication, but they had yet to realize they faced opponents with equal professional experience. Through his security feeds, Reeves observed the full scale of the operation unfolding. The cartel had committed significant resources, combining administrative authority with tactical capability. Their strategy was clever, but it had one critical flaw. They still didn't understand who they were really facing. In the culminating moment, when Wells and his team attempted to breach the secured barn area, Ajax and Shadow revealed their true capabilities. The dog's military training emerged with stunning precision, coordinating a defensive maneuver that left the cartel operatives stunned and immobilized without causing serious injury. Simultaneously, Reeves activated his final contingency. Multiple FBI teams emerged from concealed positions throughout his property, their presence the result of weeks of covert coordination. The farm had been more than a holdout. It had been the centerpiece of a federal operation to expose the cartel's infiltration of local government. Wells and his team found themselves facing not an elderly farmer, but a coordinated federal response. The documentation of their activities, gathered meticulously through Reeves's surveillance systems, provided irrefutable evidence of criminal conspiracy under color of law. The valley's transformation reversed as federal agents moved through the region, dismantling the cartel's network of compromised officials and reclaiming corrupted properties. Reeves's stand had provided the leverage needed to break their hold on the agricultural community. Ajax and Shadow returned to their patrol routes, their mission accomplished, but their vigilance unchanged. The farm would remain a symbol of resistance against organized crime, protected by two extraordinary dogs and their equally remarkable handler. If this story of courage, tactical brilliance, and unwavering determination resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Every week, I bring you more incredible true stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, showing that sometimes the most powerful warriors aren't always who they appear to be. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell to join our community of storytelling enthusiasts. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear which moment in this tactical showdown was your favorite and what kind of stories you'd like to hear next. Remember to like and share this video if you enjoyed this tale of an elderly farmer and his exceptional K9 partners who prove that appearances can be deceiving. Stay tuned for more gripping narratives that remind us that heroes come in all forms. Thank you for being part of this journey, and I'll see you in the next video.